The UPS Store can help your small business with more ings than you realize. Shipping, packing, and boxing save you time for creating. Returning, printing, and shredding free you up to focus on designing. And notarizing, mailing, and mailboxing let you do more inspiring. For any ing you need, visit a convenient location near you and get back to playing. Every ing for small business, all in one place.
The UPS Store.
Our certified packing experts make returns easy. Stop in today and we'll handle the rest.
Visit your local UPS store at 1831 Martin Luther King Boulevard, Suite 125 in Greenville, close to Walmart.
And welcome to another segment of Delta Sip, where we sip slow and talk what we know. Want to ask that you please subscribe to the Mike Magazine on Facebook, TikTok, Instagram, you name it. We are on all platforms. We're going to start on a very, very solemn note today. We had an officer who was killed in the line of duty just last night, and we're asking that you please pray and stand in solidarity with the city of Greenville, Mississippi. This has never happened in the history of law enforcement here in the Washington County area, Greenville Police Department, from what I understand. So we're asking that you please pray for the family of Officer Maisha Stewart. She was an investigator at the Greenville Police Department, and she answered to a call. And for that, we are grateful that she was so brave to go to the call. Please pray much for all involved. Today, we are bringing to you none other than Mr. Frederick Douglass. We've been telling you that Frederick Douglass is coming. Frederick Douglass is coming, and he is actually here. Let's take a look at this commercial right quick.
Frederick Douglass is coming.
Yes, Frederick Douglass is coming to Mississippi, October 12th.
This 4th of July is yours, not mine. You may rejoice, I must mourn. To drag a man in fetters into the grand illuminated temple of liberty and call upon him to join you in joyous anthem is inhumane mockery and sacrilegious irony. Do you mean, citizens, to mock me by asking me to speak today? What to the American slave is your 4th of July?
Wednesday, October 12th at 10 a.m., Delta City will have Frederick Douglass performed by Nathan Richardson on Facebook Live.
And without further ado, we are going to bring Mr. Nathan Richardson on, but he will be in full regalia, and you are going to see him actually as Mr. Frederick Douglass. So I'm really excited to hear what Frederick Douglass has to say in 2022, and we're going to bring him on right now. Welcome to Mississippi, Mr. Frederick Douglass.
Good morning, Miss Buckner. It's indeed a privilege to be here. I am here with unusual diffidence, and in hearing the opening of your show through this advent of technology, this is something quite unusual for me. Mm-hmm. But certainly my condolences as well would go out to the fallen officer, Mrs. Smith. It's certainly
Mrs. Stewart.
Stewart.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It's certainly enlightening to be talking to powerful women of the 21st century. It was only the suffragists like Susan B. Anthony and Sojourner Truth and my good friend Harriet Tubman that set the example for what the women are doing in the 21st century.
So you brought up, and thank you so much for your condolences. And I am so glad that you have an opportunity in the year of 2022 to be exposed to such technology, where I am in Mississippi speaking with you. And what state are you in, Mr. Douglass?
I'm currently in Virginia, On my way back home to Washington, D.C., I'll be returning to Anacostia this Saturday to meet with the citizens of Anacostia near my home in Cedar Hill in Washington, D.C. On Saturday. So,
and
yes.
I understand, Mr. Douglass, that you are busy like never before in 2022.
Well, yes, it seems like my good friend Mark Twain, who once said, "History may not repeat itself, but it often rhymes." And so the history of the 21st century is seeming to have somewhat of a rhyme scheme with what happened in my life and times in the 19th century. Yes.
Well, you have actually come a mighty long way. And we are hearing a lot about Juneteenth now. People are actually waking up to things that you were already talking about and advocating for back in the 19th century. Can you talk a little bit to us about the 4th of July and how you were invited and some of the speech? I know you said, do you tend to mock me by asking me to speak at such event for the 4th of July? What to the 4th of July? What to a slave is the 4th of July? And is it true that you were born a slave?
I was born into bondage, yes. Around the year 1818. I do not know the exact date of my birth, as slaves did not know the dates of their births. The closest we could come would be planting time or harvest time. You see, any slave master did not want you to have any knowledge whatsoever. An educated slave is a worthless slave, would be the mantra of any slave master of the 19th century. And so from that bondage, I freed myself. I often introduce myself as I come to you today as a thief, a robber. I stole this head, this body from my master and ran off with them. And so fortunately, I was able to make something of myself. And so as you were talking about what is going on in the modern era, the Juneteenth, which we call Jubilee. After Gordon Granger arrived in Galveston, Texas on June the 19th of 1865 and read that proclamation to those people down there, then we started to celebrate what we were calling Jubilee, which now I understand you all are celebrating Juneteenth. But it was a way to celebrate that slavery, the end of bondage had ended for everyone in this country.
Mr. Douglass, given that you rubbed elbows with some powerful women in your time, you mentioned Sojourner Truth, Harriet Tubman. Now, media would have us think that these were just figures, made up, fictitious people. Tell us a little bit about your encounters with these powerful women.
Yes, well, you might understand that I was born in Talbot County on the Eastern Shore, near St. Michael's. Harriet Tubman, or as she was born, her birth name, Araminta Ross, they call her Minty, was born in Dorchester County, which was about a day's walk from Talbot County, where I was born. And so although I did not know her before we escaped, her reputation soon introduced itself to me. And as we all did, we started to work together in collaboration on the Underground Railroad.
Wow.
And so, as of course, I was certainly heard of her and the things she was doing on the Underground Railroad, and made connections with her. And one of the first times that I met not Sojourner Truth, but Harriet Tubman, she came to my home. But this was when I was living in Rochester, New York, on South Avenue.
Mm-hmm.
and my home was using it as part of the Underground Railroad for slaves who were making their way to Canada.
Mm-hmm.
And to give you an idea of what this great woman did was to bring 12 runaways from Virginia to South Avenue in Rochester, New York, and
Mm-hmm.
knock on my door in the middle of the night. And we gave them a refuge and sleep and rest and food and shoes, and sent them on their way to Canada. And she went back to free other people in bondage. So that would give you an idea of my relationship with Harriet Tubman.
So Harriet Tubman was indeed a real person. So you have it, everybody. You heard it here first from Frederick Douglass. Harriet Tubman came to his home with people who were escaping to freedom. And Mr. Douglass, I don't know if you know this or not, but with today's modern technology, we're able to have movie theaters, and they are now so fascinated with your life story that in one of the movies, they talked about Minty, as you say they called her. And there is a scene in this movie, and I think it's called Harriet. And she is standing there with a person who is in regalia like you, looking
Mm.
like you, Mr. Douglass.
Mm.
And she couldn't believe that she was standing there with Frederick Douglass, and that she was getting her numbers up. Her count was up so high that people were wanting to know and shake her hand and know who is Harriet Tubman, because a lot of people called her Moses, and they thought
Yes.
that she was in fact a man, because they said there's no way a woman could have the audacity or the propensity to even try and break people away in freedom. And I thought that movie was just so awesome. And to see you in that movie, being depicted in that movie, and we have you here today, is just unbelievable. I just want to say thank you so much for your time and for coming to talk to the people of Mississippi about your life and your experiences and how you were born into slavery and took your freedom, if you will. And some
Yes.
would have it that now you can tell me firsthand. Some say that you left the country after you took your freedom, or became a thief and a robber, uh, taking your freedom. Did you go directly to the UK, or were you still in America? Everybody wants to know.
Yes. Well, I freed myself with the aid of my future wife, Anna Mary Douglass. I met her at the camp meetings in Baltimore, where I lived. I lived in Baltimore in Fells Point with my master's cousins, Hugh and Sophia All.
Mhm.
From the time I was around 8 years old until I was around 18. Now, there was a period where they sent me back to Talbot County. They tried to break my spirit. They put me uh, the under the servitude of this slave breaker named Edward Covey, and he tried to break my spirit, but he was surely unsuccessful.
Mhm.
And then I returned to Baltimore and devised a plan in which I would escape from Baltimore to New York, meet with my future wife, Anna Murray, and then make my way to New Bedford, Massachusetts. And once I was in New Bedford, then I established a home and a presence there, but still a runaway.
Mhm.
And so it was only after I wrote my first narrative of the life of Frederick Douglass,
Mhm.
that got me some unwanted attention,
Mhm.
some good attention, but certainly some unwanted attention,
Mhm.
that they thought it'd be prudent that I would go to stay for a while in England. And I went by way of ship, the
Mhm.
RMS Cambria, a sailboat, to Liverpool.
Mhm.
And once in Liverpool, I spent 4 months in Ireland and then another 18 months in England,
Mhm.
where I returned to America as a free man.
So you went from being uh, one who was In bondage, as you say.
That is a distinction that I want the modern audience to know, that there is no such thing, there is no identity as a person in the form of a slave.
Mm-hmm.
We are people, African, Jewish, Anglo, but we are put into bondage. So it is I called it an unfortunate unpaid occupation
Oh,
from
wow.
which I freed myself.
Okay.
And so there's no such thing as a slave as an identity. There is a person who is in bondage.
Okay. Thank you so much for clearing that up. Because we do know that a lot of wealth has been accumulated since the 19th century due to the bondage and the servitude and the free labor, if you will, of people, as you call them, people who were placed in bondage. We're going to go to a commercial break. And when we come back, I want to ask you about slave. You say they tried to break you. And I want to talk to you about slave patrol. You know, this is how law enforcement started. And so today we have people who don't really, there's a split, if you will, from my observation, where people lean towards law enforcement and some don't. When we come back off the break, we want to talk a little bit about if there was a bounty on your head before you came back to America.
You know that Ace is the place, but did you know that LaFleur Ace Hardware in Greenwood is also the place for all your building supply needs? Lumber, insulation, sheetrock, roofing, windows, doors, lighting, and more. You can get it all at LaFleur Ace Hardware. We've remodeled the store from front to back to include a full line of Benjamin Moore paint. Let our friendly staff assist you with your farm, ag, hardware, lawn and garden, and building supply needs. LaFleur Ace Hardware, 318 West Park Avenue.
Need a commercial? Let us help grow your business, your election, calendar events, special days, and community awareness. It's all affordable. Call now. You'll be so glad. We're coming up on a quick timeout, and G Wood Live needs your support each game day. We need your financial support to bring the gridiron action to you each week. It's simple. Just send your sponsorship through the Cash App, $G Wood Live. And we will mention your name during the timeouts as a quick word from our sponsors. And while you're at it, go on and download the G Wood Live app so you can take the game on the go. Angela Buckner here, the voice behind the...
Hi, I'm Angeline Ann Wardell, and I am running for school board member in District 3. Yes, I do have experience. I didn't put down all my experience, but it's a very poor wind that can't rain on their own parade every once in a while. Back before I was born, my dad was one of the ones to push the stones away at Mississippi Valley State to build a school for.
And we are back. Just wanted to get your take on how do you feel about law enforcement of today? Because I know when you made the point that an educated slave is a worthless slave. So even with an educated slave running away and being considered worthless, they still wanted to find you. But why?
Well, they wanted to find us because they wanted us to believe we were worthless to ourselves, but certainly profitable to them in the form of labor, in the form of birthing other slaves. You understand that in Maryland and in Maryland and other counties like Virginia, they literally breeded people to enrich themselves, and so to lose property in this sense would have certainly been uh, certainly worse than a tax write-off. We would say that.
Oh, wow.
And so they used everything, all the means they could, to retrieve their properties. And so that would include putting a bounty on their head, releasing hounds, all sorts of ways to recapture their property as
From what?
they saw us. And so what you might be experiencing in this modern era is an evolution or the remnants of that sort of thing with the police force, which in my time, as we progress out of bondage into emancipation, then those policemen still had ways of, and society in general had ways of putting a person who was free under the Constitution back into bondage as a servant by putting them in prison. You understand? And so it was still slavery in the sense that once you had committed a menial crime like petty theft or something like that, you might be put back into bondage and held and done hard labor longer than the average person would.
Oh, wow.
You see, so this is why after the emancipation and during Reconstruction, that many of us worked to add amendments to the Constitution that would guarantee our freedoms, specifically, and we're talking about the police force. The 14th Amendment, which guarantees us equal protection under the law, which says that any man who is captured on the street for a crime, whatever that might be, would be given the same penalty regardless of his race. And so you see, this is the foundation of what we fought for, to ensure that our police force treats us equally to other citizens of this country.
And when you talk about Reconstruction, I'm reminded of the Black codes that came about, because if they couldn't beat you physically and make you stay, they could actually make laws. They could actually make laws that will cause you to be in bondage again, but it's now repackaged. Okay.
Yes.
And it continued to resurface itself. The Black codes were resurfaced again as Jim Crow. Okay. And all of this came after Reconstruction. And I have people saying in 2020 that when they encountered someone from the South and they talked about a war in 2015 or 2000 or 1997, they thought they were talking about the Gulf War. They were still talking about the war between the North and the South. That war, I imagine, set them back so far in their minds, because when the North came through, they demolished antebellum homes. They messed up crop, all in the name of war, because they did not want to set people free from bondage. Free labor is what America has profited on. And reparations are being requested. Do you think in 2022 that reparations will ever come or be made manifest in our day and age?
Well, certainly we tried our best to ensure that our Constitution laid forth guarantees that this would not happen, that we would become fully enfranchised in American society. And so, as I mentioned, the 14th Amendment, part of the 14th Amendment is a section 3 of the 14th Amendment, which says that any person who has taken part in an insurrection of the United States of America and violated their oath to the Constitution will no longer be able to serve as a political representative in the judicial system, et cetera, et cetera. Now, and the only way that can be permitted is with a vote of 2/3 of the Congress. And so if you have people, as we did in our time, because President Johnson, after the assassination of Abraham Lincoln, allowed this to happen. And
Mm-hmm.
so now you have the remnants of this philosophy of um, the lost cause still prevailing in the modern era.
Mm-hmm.
But what I would want to stress to the listeners is that I started out my new life in freedom under the assumption that our Constitution was a flawed document,
Oh,
that
wow.
it should be torn up and rewritten, that
Mm-hmm.
it was in fact a pro-slavery document. Now, what I was able to teach myself how to read, how to decide, how to reason, and to read for myself that our Constitution is the best guarantee for our freedoms, that all men are created equal.
Mm-hmm.
And to divest yourself of the Constitution is, in fact, to set yourself on a course in which your only recourse would be armed conflict. There are three pillars of the Constitution and our democracy,
Mm-hmm.
and that is the soapbox, which we're on today. We are exercising our First Amendment right to free speech and the soapbox.
Mm-hmm.
The jury box, in which we take our differences and our different disagreements in philosophy and political ideas to the courts and to decide. And then finally, the cartridge box,
Mm-hmm.
the soapbox, the jury box, and the cartridge box.
Mm-hmm.
So you take your pick as to where this democracy might end up.
You were able to um get free, but you had some help. And you make reference to your wife. She wasn't your wife then. You'd been married before. Um, but let's talk a little bit about how you were helped to freedom.
Yes, well, you understand that I tried to escape before. I had made a pact with four other gentlemen,
Mm-hmm.
and one of them turned out to be a traitor, and we were caught and put into jail.
Mm-hmm.
Fortunately, our masters bond us out. That happened in Talbot County.
Mm-hmm.
But when I went back to Fells Point, Baltimore, and I
Mm-hmm.
met then Anna Mary, um, she was actually a freed woman. She was the first of 8 children to be born free.
Mm-hmm.
And so she already had the idea of freedom in her head. And so as we formed a plan in which she would help me dress up as a sailor
Mm-hmm.
and make my way from Baltimore, first on a train and then by boat to New York,
Mm-hmm.
that is how I escaped through with her help.
And you you didn't stay gone. You came back. Why would you come back? Why? I think about Harriet Tubman, how she didn't stay gone away. She came back again and again and again. Excuse me.
Well, first of all, I had my first decision to make when I was in England, and they gave me the proposition, Mr. Douglas, why even go back to America?
Mm-hmm.
Slavery has been abolished in England.
Right.
You have the opportunity now for us
Ex-
to send for your family and have your family sent here, and you stay here in England and live out the rest of your life a free man.
mm-hmm.
But then I had to consider that I had left not only brothers and sisters, Eliza, Perry, on in bondage, but perhaps my grandmother might be still alive. I knew my mother was dead, but
Mm-hmm.
uncles and aunts and whole millions of fellow men and women in bondage. And so I made the decision there, which I have never went back on, that I would go back and help my people gain their freedom.
Mm-hmm.
Now, as to why I went back to Talbot County to sit on the side of the bed of my former slave master is to not to I remember making a speech in 1865 on my first time coming back to Maryland as a free state, that I held an inexpressible affection for my native state and held it in my heart with the joy of an exiled son.
Mm-hmm.
And so when I went back to my master, he said, "I am surprised that you would come back
Wow.
after all that has happened." And I said, "Well, Mr. Anthony, I did not run away from you. I
Yes.
ran away from bondage. I loved, it's not that I did not love Caesar, but I love Rome more than Caesar. And all
That's
I'm coming
powerful.
back to let you know is that that I was able to accomplish, in spite of my hurdles in life, to accomplish the basic same things that you were able to accomplish, and that is to raise a family, get married,
Right.
have children, grandchildren, own a house and some property. That is the American dream, is it not? That's all I was after. The same thing you were after.
Did he want to make an attempt to try to, it reminds me of a story about how Lazarus was brought back to life and they wanted to kill Lazarus again. Did he express anything about wanting to maybe call the slave patrol or try to get you locked up again?
Well, by the time I had returned back to Maryland on the Eastern
Mm-hmm.
Shore, slavery had
Mm-hmm.
been abolished, so he had no recourse to be able to do that. But likewise, so had returned with me my reputation of
Mm-hmm.
accomplishment. And
Mm-hmm.
so, for as much as he might have considered himself my mentor, my father, he had some pride in the fact that I had accomplished so much.
Oh wow, that's awesome. I am going to flash a picture here. What are we looking at?
Well, we're looking at me sitting in my office, and I am reviewing one of the editions of my newspaper, the North Star.
Mm-hmm.
With me are two women, Annie Osling, and my second wife, who would become my second wife after my first wife passed away after 40 years,
Mm-hmm.
Helen Pitts. And so I had numerous people working with me in my newspaper. And this is a day in the office at my newspaper, the North Star.
Okay. And why was it important to have a newspaper?
Well, the black press is certainly important, not only in my time, but should be in the modern era, and that is to give a black man a voice, his own authentic
Mm-hmm.
voice. You understand, I started out with William Lloyd Garrison, who was
Mm-hmm.
publishing the Liberator newspaper. And
Mm-hmm.
he, in writing articles and opinion pieces for his newspaper, I had somewhat
Mm-hmm.
of a voice. But to have my true, authentic own voice, I would have to establish my own newspaper. And so
Okay.
that is what we did in our time. And I went to Rochester to start my own newspaper and to have a voice for the black man, and to have some way of communicating some of the concerns that we have, social, politically, and economically.
All right. And today, with technology being so um, advanced, we no longer have to print the newspaper. Some may believe that is obsolete, but I still like to feel the paper and read and see what's going on. And we have so many different platforms now that everything is at the touch of a finger. And again, I'm talking to you, and I'm in Mississippi, and you are where you are, and we are still able to put our voices out there under whatever influence we may have. And so, being that you are so accomplished, I am so grateful to know that I am actually, how do I say it? I don't want to say standing on the shoulders of, but you paved the way. 4, you paved the way for journalists like myself. Give me just a second.
Hey, need a commercial? Let us help grow your business, your election, calendar events, special days, and community awareness. It's all affordable. Call now. You'll be so glad you did.
You know that Ace is the place, but did you know that Love Floor Ace Hardware in Greenwood is also the place for all your building supply needs? Lumber, insulation, sheetrock, roofing, windows, doors, lighting, and more. You can get it all at Love Floor Ace Hardware. We've remodeled the store from front to back to include a full line of Benjamin Moore paint. Let our friendly staff assist you with your farm, ag, hardware, lawn and garden, and building supply needs. Love Floor Ace Hardware, 3
Yes, Frederick Douglass is coming to Mississippi, October 12th.
This 4th of July is yours, not mine. You may rejoice, I must mourn. To drag a man in fetters into the grand illuminated temple of liberty and call upon him to join you in joyous anthem is inhumane mockery and sacrilegious irony. Do you mean, citizens, to mock me by asking me to speak today? What to the American slave is your 4th of July?
Wednesday, October 12th at 10 a.m., Delta City will have Frederick Douglass, performed by Nathan Richardson.
The UPS store can help your small business with more ings than you realize. Shipping, packing, and boxing save you time for creating. Returning, printing, and shredding free you up to focus on designing. And notarizing, mailing, and mailboxing let you do more inspiring. For any ing you need, visit a convenient location near you and get back to playing. Every ing for small business, all in one place.
The UPS store.
Know that place. The pizza joint that used to be a massage clinic that used to be a daycare, dojo, and a nail salon. Was it the location, or did they not know how to market their business to stay in business? Everything your customers see tells a story. So from business cards and banners to expertly packed shipments to mailboxes with a real street address. Go to the UPS store today for help.
Visit your local UPS store at 18. The Mike Magazine, established 2010, bringing you only the best in sports and halftime shows through Mike TV Sports. You are now tuned in to Black Media. Continue to support Black Media in the Mississippi Delta community through sponsorship. Cash App, $MICTV, $Gwood Live.
And as I was saying, can you hear me?
Yes, I can, citizen.
Okay.
We had a break in our connection of this technology, and so I'm not sure if you can hear me as well this time, but I will certainly try to orate as I am known as an orator.
I am able to hear you. Do you have, I was just paying homage to you, and I was just saying thank you because you paved the way for me as a journalist. And to continue to make sure that people have a voice and they are heard and they don't just have a snippet here on the Mike Magazine to sip. They actually get an opportunity to say what they need to say and be heard. And that's what's so important. A lot of mainstream media outlets only do a soundbite, but you find a lot of Black media outlets that will allow them longer time and longer space.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So why would I settle for a paragraph in the Liberator newspaper published by William Lloyd Garrison when I can have the entire paper of my own?
Exactly. And on that note, I want to thank you so much for coming. And I am going to go to a commercial break. And when we come back, we are going to actually talk to Mr. Nathan Richardson. Is that okay?
Yes, ma'am. I would bid you adieu. Thank you so much for inviting me, Ms. Buckner. It's a privilege. I would certainly invite those who are near our capital, Washington, D.C., to join me on Saturday the year of our Lord 2023 on Saturday, October 15th, at Anacostia Park at 11 a.m. and take a walk with Frederick Douglass. Thank you.
All
I am
right.
yours truly.
Thank you so much, Mr. Douglass.
What you're doing right now and download the G Wood Live app. It's absolutely free. There's no cost. I'll say it again. It's absolutely free. It's your way to stay connected and stay involved in the community. Download the G Wood Live app on your Apple or your Google Play. Stay connected, stay positive, stay involved. Download the G Wood Live app.
We're coming up on a quick timeout, and G Wood Live needs your support each game day. We need your financial support to bring the gridiron action to you each week. It's simple. Just send your sponsorship through the Cash App, $G Wood Live. And we will mention your name during the timeouts as a quick word from our sponsors. And while you're at it, go on and download the G Wood Live app so you can take the game on the go. Angela Buckner here, the voice behind the mic.
Don't go nowhere.
And we are back. Thank you, everybody out there. If you're just tuning in, we just spoke with Frederick Douglass, and now we're getting ready to talk to Mr. Nathan Richardson, who actually is the person responsible for bringing Frederick Douglass to us every year. Mr. Richardson, how are you?
How you doing? It's great to be on with you. Definitely. Through Mr. Douglass, I enjoyed the conversation.
Thank you. Listen, you popped up in my timeline on Facebook, and I said, "This is something. I wonder if he will come on my show." And it took us a while to get everything together.
Yeah.
But you are, and I was able to go to your YouTube channel and look at some of the footage there, and to see how you bring about Frederick Douglass, bring him to life, if you will.
Yeah.
And that has to take a lot of studying. What inspired you to do Frederick Douglass?
Yeah. Well, I come to Frederick Douglass through poetry, actually.
Okay.
Frederick Douglass was a poet. I didn't know this before I was introduced to him.
Mm-hmm.
I knew of him.
Mm-hmm.
But a mentor of mine, saw something in me as a poet, and they said you should use that talent to embody a character. And they didn't say who.
Mm-hmm.
But in my research, I ended up finding Frederick Douglass and then reading his speeches. The first one I read was "What to the American Slave, the 4th of July."
Mm-hmm.
And that really caught me. I immediately was able to hear his voice, his cadence, as a poet, as an orator myself.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, I'm going to try this. And that was 8 years ago. Ago.
Did you find any similarities
Yes.
before you started to? Mm-hmm.
Well, I had a beard. I already had this beard. I had that since I had retired from the military. But I had to find a way to get the hair going on, and I found a really very, very talented hairdresser who,
You're okay.
Yeah. So I found a very, very talented hairdresser who was able to do this, which really matches my beard perfectly,
Mm-hmm.
But it was all the other similarities that started revealing themselves about my journey as a spoken word artist, as a poet, as a writer, that paralleled with Frederick Douglass himself. It just started growing and growing and becoming more intense and more on demand. That now I'm doing on average about 80, 90 performances a year across.
Oh, wow. That's awesome. So you're staying busy doing what you love.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you love history.
I do. I loved history when I was, in school. I love
Uh-huh.
writing. That was
Mm-hmm.
my first,
Mm-hmm.
uh, most favorite subject. But history is an extension of that. And
Mm-hmm.
I'm a historian of our family. My father was the historian of our family.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's another aspect of my indoctrination into storytelling and poetry is that
Mm-hmm.
my father was a griot,
Oh
and so
wow.
that history was instilled into me as a young person, and I just I took that to another level. Took that from my ancestors. I'm actually part Halawasapani Indian,
Mm-hmm.
and the Native Americans storytelling is their life, and
Yes.
I was set up to do this.
And I know you welcome it.
Yeah.
Um, I am hoping that the Mike magazine will be able to actually see you perform in living color in person. So
Yeah.
that with my children, because I want them to be exposed um, to this. And history is so awesome. I love history myself, and I just want to take this time to say thank you so much for coming on. You have some dates. Did you send those dates to me?
I did. I sent you my flyer for October and November,
Give
which
me a second.
about half
I'm
of
gonna
those.
pull that up.
Yeah.
Go on, listening. Tell us a little bit about those dates.
Yeah. Well, some of them are, my next date coming up is in Washington, D.C. Then I
Mm-hmm.
have a series of events that I do. I have um a contract with American Cruise Lines. They have not the big ships, but the small historic cruises. And
Mm-hmm.
I work with American Cruise Lines in the Mid Atlantic. So there's a ship that goes from Baltimore to Virginia and back,
Okay.
5 day cruise. And so I go on the ship and I present Frederick Douglass there. So I've got a few of those. In November, I'll be in South Boston, Virginia,
Mm-hmm.
um, and so forth and so on. So uh, most of the events that I have between now and the end of the year are not that far away. I do have one in October that I'll be in Ohio,
Mm-hmm.
in a city called Bath, Ohio,
Okay.
working with a historical society up there. But I travel all over the country. Don't get down south too much. As a matter of fact, the furthest south that I have been is Georgia,
Okay.
and I'll be back. Hopefully, I'll be back in Georgia this year, and I'll be in South Carolina this year.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm definitely want to get down there. I want to one of the things that I would want to places I would want to stamp in the footsteps of Frederick Douglass would be Tuskegee. He spoke at Tuskegee.
Mm-hmm.
Booker T. Washington founded Tuskegee, and Booker T. Washington and Frederick Douglass were good friends. And
Mm-hmm.
Booker T. Washington invited Frederick Douglass down there to do
Mm-hmm.
commencement speech. So if I could get down there to Tuskegee, that would be sweet. Yeah.
If you're out there and you all know some connections to Tuskegee, let's make this thing happen. Okay, because our children need to know about Frederick Douglass, and I
Right.
know a couple of people, so I'm gonna make a couple of calls, and we got to get Frederick Douglass, to
Show them
uh,
this show. Show them this show. We
exactly.
went deep. We went deep. We didn't just
Absolutely.
look. We didn't just sip. We were like drinking the whole glass. We were taking
Hello.
shots, right?
Frederick Douglass brought the house down. I ain't lying. I'm like, wait a minute. Go ahead on, Fred. I wonder if they called him Fred back in the day. He probably made him call him Frederick. My name is Frederick. So the cadence that you say you heard when he was performing and things like that, that is where you got your diction and your tone.
Yes. Yes.
Okay. That's
Yeah.
awesome,
Because
man.
I'm a poet and I'm a spoken word poet. I coach slam teams, poetry slam teams, and all that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So I'm very keen to reading a text and
Mm-hmm.
understanding the voice of a writer and that kind of thing. And so there are no recordings of Frederick Douglass.
Okay.
But so the only way to really know his voice would be to read and understand, the
How it's
pentameter, the meter, and
described.
what he's writing. Yeah.
And you talked a little bit about being half indigenous. Is that correct?
Yeah, yeah. On my paternal side, my father's side,
Oh, wow.
they were out of North Carolina, the Halawa and Sapani tribes. They merged to a tribe called
Mhm.
Halawa Sapani. And
Mhm.
so that's part of my heritage.
That's a rich heritage to have. And to have your father be a griot, he made sure that he passed down and that you got understood the importance of knowing who you are.
Yeah,
Okay, so
yeah,
man, it's good to sit around grandma, great grandma, and find out what it is that they're talking about because they got something to say. And with that being said, where can we find you?
yeah, yeah. I'm very blessed. You can actually just Google my name,
Okay.
and you'll come up with my poetry, my Frederick Douglass, but specifically my social media hashtag is Frederick Douglass Live.
Hmm.
And then I have a website, uh, scpublishing.com or spiritualconceptspublishing.com. And so
Hmm.
you can go there and find out, what I do is in as far as poetry, as far as history, etc.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Hey, thank you so much for coming on. We don't want to hold you anymore. This has been very fun, and
Yeah.
it was what edutainment, if you will.
Yeah.
Um,
Edutainment. Edutainment.
edutainment.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for coming on the show, Nathan. We pray, I hope and pray that this won't be your last time stopping by the Mike magazine.
Oh yeah, absolutely. It's about growth. We
Hmm.
talked about this offline about the
Hmm.
growth of our
Hmm.
profession and what we can do to empower each other, and that's what I got out of this experience with you and your show. So
Hmm.
I
Thank you
appreciate it.
so much. Thank you so
Yeah,
much, brother.
thank you.
You have a great day.
Bye bye.
Hmm. And with that being said, we are going to wrap up the show, but not before we pay our respects to our fallen officer. Okay, Maisha Stewart from Greenville, Mississippi. We're going to try to bring on some people who actually used to work for the Greenville Police Department who can shed light on um, what it was like when they were there and talk about some of the things that are going on right now in our nation and our state as it relates to officers, law enforcement, and their contribution to law enforcement. And on that note, we want to say thank you to the city of Greenville for the press release, which came out in such a fast way that we were able to use the press release to bring some type of information to the general public who wanted to know what was actually going on in the city of Greenville on last night. And with that being said, we want to say thank you so much for coming to listen to Frederick Douglass on Delta SIP. He informed us on a lot of things, and hopefully we'll be able to go and see one of his events. And here is his schedule here. And again, you can go and find him at Frederick Douglass Live, Live, on his social media platforms. And you can just Google the name. Okay, Nathan Richardson. But this here is a layout of his tour for October and November. And if you're out there, um, the powers that be at universities across the South, especially, at Tuskegee, especially. But if you're HBCU, you need to find this guy. You need to get with the president of the HBCU. You need to make sure that Frederick Douglass is being booked. Nathan Richardson is the man that you want to book. Be sure to Continue to subscribe to the Mike Magazine on Facebook, TikTok, Instagram, you name it. We are everywhere. And with that said, Angela Buckner here, the voice behind the mic, where we sip slow and talk what we know. And now I gotta go. Thank you so much for tuning in.
What you're doing right now, and download the G Wood Live app. It's absolutely free. There's no cost. I'll say it again. It's absolutely free. It's your way to stay connected and stay involved in the community. Download the G Wood Live app on your Apple or your Google Play. Stay connected, stay positive, stay involved.
The Mike Magazine, established 2010, bringing you only the best in sports and halftime shows through Mike TV Sports. You are now tuned in to Black Media. Continue to support Black media in the Mississippi Delta community through sponsorship. Cash App, $MICTV,
You know that Ace is the place, but did you know that Love Floor Ace Hardware in Greenwood is also the place for all your building supply needs? Lumber, insulation, sheetrock, roofing, windows, doors, lighting, and more. You can get it all at Love Floor Ace Hardware. We've remodeled the store from front to back to include a full line of Benjamin Moore paint. Let our friendly staff assist you with your farm, ag, hardware, lawn and garden, and building supply needs. Love Floor Ace Hardware, 318 West Park Avenue, locally owned.
We're coming up on a quick timeout, and G Wood Live needs your support each game day. We need your financial support to bring the gridiron action to you each week. It's simple. Just send your sponsorship through the Cash App, $G Wood Live. And we will mention your name during the timeouts as a quick word from our sponsors. And while you're at it, go on and download the G Wood Live app so you can take the game on the go. Angela Buckner here, the voice behind the mic.